My name is Davis Wardwell. I'm 18
My name
years
is
old.
Lisa
My name is
Hannon.
Noah Blunt. I'm the student pastor here
Trio
at Westside.
Glenn. I'm actually Charlie's cousin.
David Thomas, here with Charlie.
Austin Gregory. Thank you for having
My
me.
name is Donovan
My name is
Jones.
Micah Aver. I'm a student at Lounge High
All
School.
right. Well, Mr. Charlie, you're going to lead us out here tonight on your Young Minds podcast.
All right, welcome back to the podcast, and today we have something extra special and different for you. Today we're going to be going into our first deep dive episode, and for people that don't know what those are, they're going to be specific episodes. They're going to take a returning guest, and we're going to talk about a specific topic. Today I brought back Davis with me, and we're going to talk about temptations, and this will be part 1. So Davis, I'm glad to have you back on, man.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here.
And this is what, your third time, I think?
Third time's a charm.
Dude, and it hasn't been that long since we did the 100th. So for part 1, we're gonna focus on phone addiction and sexual sin. But I'm gonna go and read you a definition. Then Davis is gonna take over for phone addiction. So the definition of phone addiction is the obsessive use of a smartphone. The behavioral addiction is often dubbed as nomophobia, or the fear of being without a mobile device, and that's from the Addiction Center.
Yeah, and that's pretty crazy because we were just talking about this. It's not just being addicted to using your phone. It's being addicted to just having your phone with you. Mm-hmm. And that just goes straight into the first fact I got for you today. Mm-hmm. The average user touches their phone over 2,617 times a day.
And I know we were talking about this on the phone a couple of days ago, but I wonder what that encompasses, just in your pocket, or if you're actually physically touching it, or if every scroll or tap, what does that encompass? I wonder.
Yeah, I can't. I mean, I don't know for sure, but I think the lesson to be learned from that fact is that people are their phone is almost like a comfort device, like a stuffed animal is for a small child. They just have to have it with them. It has to be near it. They have to be able to touch it. I mean, I don't know how many times I'll sit there and just hold my phone. I won't even be using it.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And as the listeners can be able to see, we struggle with this one too.
We do. I mean, we do. And even with, I was going to mention this too, even with somebody like yourself that doesn't have social media except for YouTube, right?
Yeah.
It's still a big thing, right? It's not just for the fact, because I have social media, and that probably is not, and for a phone addiction, that's not a good thing. But even for people that don't have it, they still struggle with that, just picking it up, because it's their way of communicating the outside or figuring it out what's going on, in the world, and we have to know. I guess. Do we? I don't think we have to know every second, but I think we feel like we have to.
We definitely feel like we have to.
And I think it's even just increased, because I was thinking about it, we're kind of the generation, or the generation of kids that, smartphones were starting to be a thing, but we still went outside, right?
Yeah.
And then now, today's kids are yeah, I want to pick up a phone now. And it kind of is no, it kind of, it's a really weird time we live in right now.
Yeah, it's a really
what
weird
else do you
time.
have on phone statistics?
Here's another interesting one.
Okay.
66%, so almost 2/3 of people feel anxiety when they lose or forget their phone, run out of battery, or have no signal. So if their phone's not working, 66% of people feel anxious.
That's crazy. That's a crazy one. I'm sure I'll do a deep dive on anxiety as well, but that's insane.
There's not that many other things that I feel like I would be anxious if I didn't have it, Right. It's how many things in life would 66% of people feel anxious about if it wasn't with them?
Well, because, you even have the people that say, I'm not anxious about anything. Because there's people that really, stuff when, big events or whatever, life events happen to them, they just don't worry about it. They're just that kind of person, which... If you are that kind of person, yay for you, because trust me, it sucks when you're anxious about stuff. But even those people, they get anxious about not having their phones.
Yep.
That's when it breaks through. It's oh my gosh, where's my phone at? I've seen the freakouts. It's and I remember a school trip I went on, a teacher, she thought she had lost hers, and she was freaking out, so I totally understand that.
Yeah, I learned in 6th grade, because I got a phone about halfway through 6th grade. Mm-hmm. And in 6th grade, I didn't have a phone for the first half, and I would just sit there, this was a youth group, and I would just sit there and I'd stand, and everybody else would be on their phone, and I would feel so insecure. And then when I got the phone later on that 6th grade year, we'd all be standing there, but I'd be on my phone, and I'd feel calm inside because it was almost like since I had purpose, I was doing something. I felt like people weren't making fun of me or looking at me or bringing attention to me.
Right.
And so I don't know what that has to do with it, but I think there's definitely some coping mechanisms related with having a phone.
Definitely. Go ahead.
Our next fact is, and we have a lot of facts.
Yeah,
today.
hey, we got a lot of statistics for both sexual sin and phone addiction, so get ready for that.
Yep. Apps like Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook, and pretty much all social media apps use dopamine triggers, which is the same psychological reward system as gambling. So they are purposefully trying to get you addicted to these things.
Yep. And like I think, you look at that, like that's how society is. Like that's what the big corporations, they want that to be that way. Like with anything, social media. And we'll talk about this a little bit, but pornography sites, or just big businesses, right? When they want you to buy into, say their fast food, for example, right? So all that is wanting to trigger a good feeling in you, a dopamine hit, and it's it's really it's sad because then I think for some people it doesn't leave enough room for the good things like family and God for the big things, right? And what God can do, because for some people, they're like, oh yeah, that's great that God did that, but it should be a way bigger thing or a way bigger reaction. But their bodies or their minds are so used to these little dopamine hits here and there that it's not as big to them when it should be.
Right.
And I think that's kind of where we miss the mark because of all this other stuff.
Yeah, we really do. And I think former generations can attest to that, looking at our generations now.
Yeah.
And that leads me to the next one is studies using MRI scans have found that excessive smartphone use can shrink gray matter in areas of the brain that are responsible for focus, impulse control, and decision making. And this is similar to changes seen in drug addicts. I don't know about you, but it's obvious that's true because I started to lose thought halfway through reading that long fact.
Yeah, right. And so, because they talk about our generations having our attention spans, right? And I think there's some truth. There is some truth to that because, think about when you, and again, I don't know if this is a good example, but when you're sitting through a long lecture, right?
Yeah.
In college, you need to focus on that because that is what you're going to be either having a test on or whatever. But your mind might drown it out because or even in the important stuff like a sermon, from your church or whatever. Even though you want to listen and you want to learn, your mind might try to drown it out because you're so just, not there because your focus isn't there.
That's a good point. And it's crazy that looking back on over time, if you think about long ago, kids could play with sticks for hours and hours and hours. And that sounds horrible to me now.
No, but you're right. And we'd go outside and actually do something, and run around, burn off some energy. And now we just are hooked on, technology.
Yep. And then after that, it went to watching movies, which were 2.5 hours long, 2 hours long.
Yep.
Now, and then people couldn't sit through movies, so they made TV shows.
Yep.
People could watch 45-minute episodes.
And now you have short form content like Instagram Reels. You got TikTok. You have YouTube Shorts. Even YouTube knew they were getting too long, and so they were we're going to make shorts because people need that short form content.
Even a 10-minute YouTube video became too long, which is crazy.
And that's because I think I was talking to some teachers about that at one point a long time ago. They were like, "Yeah, that's even too long for me." A 20-minute YouTube video, that's not that long. What do you mean you can't sit through a 20-minute YouTube video? And that's the one thing about doing something like this that always worries me is how short or how long do I need to make these because people don't have the attention span for it, or even if they're just listening to it, they're just I'll listen to it later, and then they never do, or whatever. And so it's and there might have been something that God was trying to tell them in that, and because of their attention span, they're no.
Speaking of short-term content, I believe you are doing some short-term content.
Yeah. So, like Davis was saying, I'm trying to do, upload on YouTube and stuff and do some shorts and things like that. And, talking about phone addiction and everything, it's really tricky with social media because everybody, I think, has a love-hate relationship with it. because it can be a great tool to use for like promotion and getting your stuff out like I do. However, you can get consumed by it, you know. And I think I've got to be careful with it, because I think more and more, especially with the YouTube thing, like you get obsessed with, oh my gosh, there's another subscriber, there's that, there's and that becomes more of a number rather than a person.
Yep.
But you have to remember these are people that you're dealing with, and not just numbers. So yes, it's a great tool to use. I'm not going to say that social media is not, because it's a wonderful way to get your stuff out. But for like people, because somebody that was younger than me, they were asking me, they said, and I told them in no way I should be your final say so on it, but they were asking me if they should have social media, and I said, they were about 16. I said, if you have nothing to promote, I say no. Like, if you have nothing to promote, no, because you can more than likely figure out what's going on in the world by your parents, by me, whatever. Like, because it was somebody younger than me, and I was trying to tell them, I said, you don't need to go down that path, and because it especially if you start commenting on stuff or whatever, that follows you like a paper trail.
Yep.
A digital footprint. Mm-mm.
And I mean that's a good point, because I mean that's what you do for me. I don't have social media.
Yeah.
But you do, because of your podcast, and you just keep me filled in on what's going on.
Right. And so like, that's not to say that it can be. It's not all bad. Like, there's some good. But I think there's a lot more things that are bad about it. Especially because it makes people really mean. Like, I've seen that. Like, it makes people hateful, because they can disguise themselves and hide their identity. And so they can be keyboard warriors, as I like to say, and they just type away on their social media pages or whatever and be hateful, even if they don't believe it. They just want to be mean, or they have a grudge against whatever the topic is. And so I would say, if you're on the fence about getting social media, don't do it. Just save yourself the headache. Just have somebody else inform you about whatever's going on. It works out better that way every time.
But if you are, and you are on YouTube, go check out.
That's right. Go check out the Young Man's Podcast. I just dished on social media, and then, but I mean, really, it does help if you go check it out. Because like I said, I think we can make a difference on social media with stuff like this. And make it a better place for people. I mean, because, obviously the devil uses it. Well, Jesus does too. Anything the devil uses, Jesus can use it too. And we've obviously seen that through not just this, but any other platforms and other people. So
that's good. Give you another fact here.
Yeah.
80% of people, and we were laughing about this the other day, and it is funny, but it's also kind of not.
Yeah.
80% of people report experiencing phantom vibrations caused by their phone addiction. That happens to me probably 2 or 3 times a day.
Dude, that happens to me a lot. I mean, because I'm always on the, going back to the podcast side of things, I'm always on the, like listen, and always trying to figure out if somebody's needing something from me for that or whatever. And so I think it's kind of gotten bad. I'm being honest. I feel I'm like, dang it, that was nothing. And it'll happen in pivotal moments, say on a Sunday morning, when Will's trying to do the life group lesson or something, and it's that shouldn't happen. So I definitely can see where that can be a problem. Definitely.
Yeah, I agree.
And I saw one. I don't even know if I don't think I wrote it down, but it was a study or whatever. It was a study that said something about a crazy number. I don't remember the exact number, but it was of Americans using their phone while in the bathroom. It was it's just kind of to lighten the mood. But it's
who doesn't do that?
I know, but because nobody uses magazines anymore. So, but legit, it was such a funny statistic. But at the same time, you're we need to rectify that as a society. There's got to be something else, right?
Surely we're made for more than that.
right. You would think so, but. You got any more crazy facts?
I got way more.
Good.
On average, and this one might be my favorite, or favorite in the worst way. It freaked me out the most. On average, people spend about 3 hours and 15 minutes daily on their phone. This adds up to 44 days per year. And if you do the math, if you live to 80 and you follow that 3 hours and 15 minutes daily, that's 11 years of your life spent on your phone.
What, dude? That's.
And then I was just man, do I really want 11 years of my life spent on my phone?
Not at all.
The answer is no.
Not at all. I mean, that is. Well,
that's the average too.
I know, and the fact, and that's the average. Imagine some people, they're especially And again, just going back to it, especially content creators, they have to be careful about that because that's what their life is. It's on social media, or that's what their income is, and promoting things. But you have to find that balance. And I'll be honest, I don't think I found that balance quite yet. I'll get there, but it'll take a while for me to figure out, okay, well, where's the balance from doing this and figuring that? Because I'll stress myself to death trying to figure something out. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm just being honest. I'll, like, oh my gosh, if I don't get this out in time, I'm going to, like, freak out, But, I think there's especially for content creators, there's to be a healthy balance in how much you spend on technology and how much you don't.
Yeah, so there's a balance, just like with anything.
Right.
And this fact, oh man, you even had set me up to say this one.
Oh.
Studies have found that the average phone screen contains 10 times more bacteria than a toilet seat.
Oh, no!
So if you licked your phone screen, that's 10 times worse that's like licking a toilet seat 10 times.
Gross, dude. I mean, that isn't, well, I believe it, but like, well, I mean, and this is just to be funny, but I can flip my phone case over right now. There's dog hair in my phone case. I mean, I'm not even kidding. And I don't even know how it gets there. My dog just sheds, and so it's just there. But I believe that, but that is insane.
So if you take anything from this podcast, clean your iPhone case every once in a while.
And don't lick it.
Yeah, don't lick it.
Don't lick it, okay? If you don't get anything else out of it, don't lick your phone case or anything of that nature. Mm-mm.
Well, then I was sitting there thinking, and I don't mean to gross anybody out, but I was like, how many times do I touch my phone and then my finger ends up in my mouth or, scratching my ear?
Yeah.
So that's like rubbing your finger on a toilet seat 10 times and then putting it in your mouth.
Yeah.
Which is
I'm going to be like this, just walking around with my hands out like this, just like, ugh. Oh man. Probably after this, go wash my hands like 10 times just to get all the, oh my gosh. So is there any more facts you got about that?
One last one.
Yep.
And this goes back to what we were talking about YouTube Shorts and stuff. Excessive phone use can reduce your attention span to as short as 8 seconds, which is less than a goldfish.
What?
So people say I have the I have the attention span of a goldfish.
Yeah.
Nope, it's worse.
That's bad. That's really bad. Like, oh my gosh.
It's not good.
It's not good. Not at all. And sometimes I'll sit there and think, of course we wouldn't have all this technology and everything, but sometimes I wish we could go back in time sometimes to simpler times where we didn't have all. It's like some of it was good, but people know how to use it in moderation. They didn't let it take over their lives,
right.
And then we just got so advanced where it was like, oh heck yeah, we're going to use it for everything. I mean, now we're using AI just to, I could literally if I wanted to, type in a prompt and say have if I had a picture of you or whatever, have Davis eating a donut, and it could do it, and and so we've really just for one thing, I'm thinking we've gotten lazy. We've used technology. I think one thing technology's done is made us just really really lazy.
Yeah, that's true.
But also it, we're kind of being, I think, and this is kind of going from conspiracy theory stuff, but whatever. I think we're kind of we're being too I don't know what's the word, but we're too eager to know what's the next thing. We're like, oh yeah, well here's this AI stuff, let's use it. And then what if it could, turn into something bad? And then you know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Or using and I use it so I can't really say anything too bad, but Alexa, right? Or I've got Starlink. The other day, they accidentally got turned off. That means they could shut our internet down or whatever, and we wouldn't have no access to nothing, and all the content creators would freak out, and we'd have no income, no nothing. And that'd be for a lot of people, even just in business jobs, because they have, they work off of computers now.
Yep.
So, I feel like technology is great, but at the same time, what do we do if things go wrong? We're stuck, or we get regressed decades. I mean, and I think there's a movie about that or something, a big EMP or whatever goes off, and then the world just gets sent back decades.
Yeah.
And I'm and I know that's sounds so far fetched, but is it really? Is it really there?
When you really think about it, maybe it's not.
No, I mean the idea had to come from somewhere.
Yeah, and I mean here's a fun take on think about with ChatGPT.
Mm-hmm.
I mean the whole premise of it is that every time you talk with it, it learns.
Yep.
And everything that's posted on the internet, it learns from. But it's really censored right now because it doesn't pull from everything on the internet right now.
Right.
But when it was first created, it did. And
Oh,
so when
yeah.
people would, I don't know if you saw this, but
I
when
did, I
people would
think I
talk
did.
to it, it would start like cussing them out and would get mad. It would threaten to like kill them. And I mean, it was like crazy.
Yeah.
And it was because it had access to all of
To everything.
the uncensored content. And part of me is like, if it's constantly learning, which is the whole premise of this AI thing, when's it going to learn to uncensor itself? Think about that.
That's a valid point. You got a point there. But is there any other facts or anything that you got for phone addiction or anything? Or
That's
any
all
thoughts?
I got. But I think is like, so that's kind of the doom and gloom.
Yeah.
But I think some practical solutions to some of these issues is to, I thought of a few. One is don't stay up late lying in bed
That's a good one.
on your phone.
Because, and what I'm about to say will lead into the next topic, but because, I'll say this, nothing past 11 is never good on your phone, okay? I'm just being real. It's not. Because your mind will start to wander and go crazy and go to different places that you don't want it to go to.
Yeah.
You're right there.
And also, it hinders your sleep terribly. You'll end up staying there way longer than you want to.
Yep.
Another good thing is just to be conscious of how many hours you're spending on your phone.
Yep.
Maybe try to limit yourself to, I only spend 30 minutes a day on Instagram, whatever that limit is that you set for yourself.
Yeah.
And just be mindful of it. I feel like that's a big deal.
Yeah. And like one thing and I've been trying to do it, it's not easy, but especially when sometimes your internet goes out, is to put my phone in another room. I'll have it on charge, but just in another room. So I don't, because then I would, if I really wanted, I had to forcibly get myself out of bed, out of my comfortable bed, and go get it, which I don't do that very often. If I've got my phone in another room, because once I'm down in bed, I'm down.
That's a fair point.
Yeah, and I know that some people, talking about from the biblical perspective, they, they put their Bibles on top of their phones. Well, why don't we just put our Bibles in place where our phones were, and then put your phone in another room?
Yep.
So then
that's
you have
good.
the reflex of, because I know that you talked about doing that, and I'm not trying to rat you out here or nothing, but I know that didn't you say you just grab your phone,
Just
pick
move
your
the
Bible off,
Bible
and
and grab your phone,
right.
yeah.
And so I think if we probably so wherever you put your phone at now, if it's in your room or wherever you're sleeping, put your phone in another place and put your Bible in place of it, and then you'll be like, oh yeah, you'll try to go grab your phone, but then you'll grab your Bible instead.
Yeah.
And it'll remind you to read, because the Lord knows we got to do that every day. We'll talk about that here in a little bit, but
I think another thing that we often do, I feel like over time we've gotten more okay with being on our phone in a social setting.
Yeah.
At dinner or at hanging out with friends or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And that's something I've been trying to be mindful of. If somebody's it'll get to the point where somebody will be talking to you and you'll be on your phone, and it's really easy to do. And so just be mindful of, is this really the appropriate time to be scrolling,
And we've all done that. So I'm not, we're not trying to preach at you and say, oh, we haven't done that at all. No, we've all done that. And I will even tell you, even after doing some of these episodes, I'll sit there and look at something for a second, and then somebody's trying to talk to me, and then I realize I shouldn't have done that. That was really rude. So I 100% get you there. But is there anything else you want to add to phone addiction or anything? I just want to make sure.
Unless you've got something.
Don't think so. Other than this one study I was reading up on, it found that 83% of teens use their phone daily, and an addiction rate of 37%, on an average of 7 to 9 hours spent on screen time. Which is probably is around the same amount as what you were saying. That's an average, and then
that's crazy.
Just imagine so then 83% of teens use it daily, and then. And then I'm sure, I don't know what the range is, if it's from, what that range is, but, I wonder if, if it's from just some like early college to youth or what. I mean, I didn't look that far, but it makes you wonder like how far that goes. And also like the 37% addiction rate, and I wonder if that's climbing. Like these statistics make you think. They're like, these facts are like, it's like, are they climbing, or are they, or I hope they're regressing. I think I read one that was on for part 2, but it was talking about how something was dropping in for drugs and alcohol for teens and youth, and I was like, well, that's a good thing. At least something's dropping, because it seems like everything else is climbing and climbing and climbing, from what I see. But if you don't have anything else, we'll go on to the next topic.
Well, yeah, one more thing actually.
Yeah, go ahead.
I forgot about the let's kind of talk about how it affects small children because I read a little bit on that.
Yeah.
So what the study showed is from the age of 0, so when the baby's born to when it's 2 years old, there is no reason at all for it to ever see a screen.
No.
There's no benefits. And if you can come up with a benefit, the benefit never outweighs the cons.
Good.
That was what it said, and,
Yeah.
and I really do believe that.
Yeah.
There's who was it? That was Matt Walsh. Was telling the story
Matt Walsh. Yeah.
about how when he goes on like a long trip with his family, and he'll hand them their iPads or whatever for the trip. Then they'll be on that thing for like 4 hours, and then when they get there, they have like withdrawals when you take it away from them because it's just so addicting, and especially for a young developing mind. I mean, it's kind of a scary thought, honestly.
Yeah. I mean, it is. I mean, especially, because I think parents also too, they feel that pressure of like, what do we do? Because we don't want our kids to feel like, less than or whatever, because we're not doing, or like we don't want them to feel like we're not doing right by them or whatever by not letting them the phone. But at the same time, they don't realize what you're trying to do, and what benefits they'll have later on in life. Yeah. And I know that'll be something that we both think about in the future when we have families and all that. Like, how much technology is gonna go, and be a part of, our day-to-day lives with our families.
And I know it's really hard for parents because, of course, I can't relate to it, but I've heard people say like, oh, well, when you're on a 4-hour car ride with your children and they're screaming and won't stop screaming unless there's a iPad in their hands, what are you gonna do? Yeah. And I think that's kind of a decision every parent has to make. Are they gonna?
Yeah. And even oh my gosh, I'm like this sounds like I'm like talking like ancient technology when it's really not. The screens that you used to have in like the back seat, like the movie, like we'll play movies and
stuff. Do they still have those in cars?
I think some do.
I feel like everybody with the Honda minivan had one in like 2010.
Yeah, like I don't think there was that many cars that had them, but at the same time though, it made me go. It was making me want when I was little for my parents to get one, like to get a car like that. And again, it goes back to that wanting that technology, like even from a young age. It's kind of so I feel like it's been ingrained into our society, which is it can be a good thing and a bad thing at the same time. But yeah. But is there anything else you got? I just want to make sure that you cover everything before.
That's all I got for real this time.
Okay. All right. Just want to make sure. So now we're going to go into sexual sin, and we're going to kind of do the same thing. I'll dive into, some like statistics, and we can stop, or if there's anything that like really stands out or shocks you, you can stop and say something about it. So that pornography sites comprise 12% of the internet. That one was a shocking one. Think about all the sites that are on the internet.
12%.
And 12%.
Wow.
And
that's billions of pages of content. That's horrible.
And it's 12%. Yeah, we're about to go in the trenches right now. But 12% of all sites, and I read that and I was like, and this is all from the same site. Tried to be anyway. But it was just shocking to me. I was like, and it's that accessible, which is. It's really like concerning. And then 90% of children ages 8 to 16 have viewed pornography. Which 8 to 16, that's crazy.
That's nuts.
Yeah.
The thing about that though is about that last fact is if 12% of the internet's made up of those websites and stuff, that kind of assumes that 12% of the reason people go on the internet is to access those sites and stuff. And that's horrible.
Dude, I didn't think about it that way until you said that. Yeah. And of course and I just want to preface this, I did there's like one or two facts in here about like how it affects women, but, of course, me and Davis, we're not going to know that because we're not women. So, do your research on that as well. Or any of these facts we're trying to throw at you. Please do your own research because we're not the best people at it. We just wanted to make you aware of all these topics. But the largest demographic, and this wasn't exactly shocking, but it was still a fact to include, is 12 to 17-year-old boys. That's not like, the most shocking one out of all of them, but I wish it wasn't the case. Especially from a spiritual standpoint, because, those will be we're supposed to be the ones that are going to be leading our families one day. Mm-hmm. And there's no way we can lead our families with an addiction like that.
And that's undoubtedly like a spiritual attack from the devil. Mm-hmm. He's attacking them before they can, when they're young, before they can become the leaders that they were meant to be.
Yep. And this is more of a, like for older, 70% of men ages 18 to 34, they visit one of those sites in a typical month. So if they're married, if they're married, like, because that's like the prime range, I would say, to get married, there might be still visiting one a month. And that's just saying, that's not like from a Christian website. That's just a man in general. But
that's just terrible, because that just must mean that so many people's marriages are just so broken. Uh-huh. And then also when you're doing that and you're not married, mm-hmm. you're damaging that future marriage with that. If God's called you to be married with that wife that you're going to have one day. Yeah,
and I know we've had constant, conversations about that, and it, and it's something that like is always in the back of my mind, like, because I've seen videos on it, I've thought it, because building that foundation of, for your family starts even before you're married, even before you even meet whoever that person is that you're going to start your family with. It starts that way, and you don't want to give off the wrong impression either. When it comes to starting a family, because the last thing I want to do is deceive whoever I'm going to get married to. That wouldn't. It's not going to happen. Nope. So this one right here was about women. It said 1 in 6 women struggle with that type of addiction, which that was kind of a shocking one to me, because again, we don't know that. Like we don't. And again, that it might be more. I don't know that for a fact, and the reason why I'm just kind of summarizing it is just because, again, I don't know as much about their side of the addiction as ours, because I know they struggle with it. And I think if I can find it, I'll link it. There was a video I saw where this girl, she was talking about her testimony, and it was about that, and it was solid. Like, it was good. Like, it made my attention span go up. I was like, I sat and watched the whole thing. I made sure. I was like, it was really, really good. But then here's the one you have something to say about it, and I told you about this one. 50% of pastors look at pornography.
Yeah, I can't even grasp that. Mm-mm. I really can't.
Or have, or I don't know what the.
How can you? I know I'm probably going to sound kind of harsh here, but how can you be a pastor and be okay with having that in your life? If a pastor listens to this, like if you're listening, pastor, and you have this issue in your life, then right now you are not fit for that role right now.
No.
You need to go talk to, the senior pastor. If you are the senior pastor, you need to talk to, I guess, your deacons.
Yeah.
And you need to confront that sin and talk with people about it, and either get it worked through, have counseling, get it fixed, mm-hmm. or you probably really need to do is you probably need to step down mm-hmm. and get your life right.
Yeah. And even if it was like, say, like you weren't fired, for example, like if it was just like leave, you need to step away regardless of what it is.
Yeah,
like,
you
regardless,
need to get that fixed before you're back up there.
Because, the devil will make you feel this all the time, like, because you're preaching God's word, but then, you're being a hypocrite. Which, there's a fine line in between. Like, because the devil makes me feel that all the time. Like, if I sin or whatever, and I'm trying to, do this podcast or whatever, it was like, oh, you're a hypocrite because you still sin or whatever. Well, of course we all do, but when you have a type of sin like, and I know we're not supposed to rank sin because sin's sin, but, when there's something of that kind of nature like that, you have to get that, worked mm-hmm. on. You can't just keep it under wraps and think it's just going to go away, because it won't.
Yeah, and that's the thing about sexual immorality of any kind. Mm-hmm. And I think that verse is maybe in Romans. It says flee from sexual immorality.
Yep.
Only time in the Bible where it doesn't say take your armor up and fight. It says flee.
That's the only. Yep.
And that's what it says in Proverbs too, when it's talking about walking down with the adulteress's path by mm-hmm. her house. Don't do it. Don't go near it. Don't play with that. Don't go. Right. Don't even try it.
Yeah, exactly. Because and one thing that I did want to mention too is like, and it talks about this, and I have the verse down here, but 1 Corinthians, it talks about, this sin is inside the body, right? Mm-hmm. And one thing that it makes me, I was thinking about with that verse was, was that, like, that sin, I feel like a lot of people feel like it's easy to hide it because there's no physical, like, nothing, like, happens to you. For example, like, for, like, with drugs and alcohol, you can tell. Like, your teeth might be crooked, or, you might look like, but there's something that happens, right? Whereas, like, with, like, sexual sin or, like, pornography, like, your mind's messed up.
Right.
Nothing else. And people aren't going to know that unless you tell them.
It's emotional and spiritual
right.
rather than physical.
And unless the people, like, the only way they're going to probably notice is if, like, you stop going to church or whatever. And, but even then, you've got people that struggle with it and they're still doing what, they go to church and everything. So they're not going to notice unless if you say something. You got to speak up. Because there's going to be people that want to help you get you through that. And God will give you those people. You just have to, it's one of those deals that God will give you a way out, but you've got to accept the way out, And I think a lot of people, they have issue with that, because they hold on to it so long.
Yeah, and that's a good point. I mean that goes back to what Adrian Rogers said. Mm-hmm. The devil would much rather send you to hell from the pew than the gutter.
That's good. That's really good. And this was another statistic that was just like, whoa. Like, it was like, but 10 to 14 billion is spent on pornography annually. That is the same amount as the U.S. government spends on foreign aid.
Wow.
Yeah. Like, I read that and I was like, you kidding me? Like, and as I was reading, looking at these statistics, the one thing that popped in my head is that, to encourage people is, I've been a statistic. Davis has been a part of those facts and statistics. Don't make yourself part of one. Don't be a part of that. Like, you can break that cycle and not be part of it, like, that was just one thing that I thought of as I was reading those, was that, break that cycle, because it can be, I'm not saying it is, but it also can be, like, generational too. Stuff like that can be generational. And you can be the one to break it.
Yeah.
But is there anything you got to say about that fact specifically, about how much they spend? Because I thought it was crazy.
Yeah, I was trying to kind of do the quick math in my head. Like, if that money, how many people are in the United States? Do you know?
I don't know.
I always thought it was about 500,000. I mean, if
we,
$500 million. Sorry,
yeah,
$500 million.
if we go with that number, then
everybody will get a check for $28. All right, that doesn't prove how big amount of money that is as well. But regardless, that is a crazy amount of money that could be spent on way better purposes.
Right.
Which is pretty much any other purpose, but
right. I mean, and I read that and I was like, oh my gosh, like that, like it really like threw me for a loop. I was like, there's because you don't really think about that kind of stuff while you're, like, if you're viewing it or whatever, and then but like then I read it and I was like, that's insane. Like that's how much, like, and the fact that, and you think about it, the government allows it.
Yeah.
Like, like
it censors what you say about politics on whatever, but you can look up that. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah. And I mean, I've even, like some of these like blockers or whatever, like you said, it's weird what you can look up and what you can't. It's like like there's no point. Like, like you can, I remember in school you could look up, like, I don't remember what it was, but you could look up something pretty crazy. But then you couldn't look up, like, say something you needed for school. It was like these blockers are wild. Like, they're not consistent and they're not blocking the right things.
Yeah, American censorship is on another level right now.
You're not kidding. Yeah.
Something that's got to get fixed.
I would agree with that.
Wasn't that like why Elon bought
Twitter or X? Yeah.
Because he wanted to try to stop that.
That was the reason. Yeah. But is there anything else? Well, we'll talk about accountability here in a second. But is there anything else you want to say about those facts or anything like that?
Well, I did want to go back and after thinking about it some more.
Yeah.
To what I said about how talking about pastors in that role.
Yeah.
The Bible's really clear that if you're in the act of adultery, then you don't need to be a pastor.
Right.
And so, and I know what I said was like, take take a break or whatever, you really need to hand in your notice.
Yeah.
If you're, because that is the same thing as adultery. I know most people know that, but when you watch pornography and stuff, that's adultery.
Yep. Yeah. And one thing I did want to, and again, we kind of talked about this, but how, like, for like you is like, because you are in the future, you'll be like starting a family. I know that. Like, when you look at all this stuff, how much does that affect you going, thinking about all that? Like, I'm sure it's deep.
Yeah. I mean, I look at it and it's just like, I mean, it just, you just have to say in your mind, it's just like divorce. It's not an option.
Yeah.
It just can't be an option.
Yeah.
It just isn't. And then I look and I think about my children one day, and they have to have role models because women do struggle with this too.
Right.
They have to have role models that that preach what they that
preach
walk
what
they talk.
Right. Yeah, and and like that's one thing that I think people also think too is that once I get married it goes away. No, it doesn't go. It doesn't happen that way. And I've heard, and I'm just being honest, I've heard stories of women help supporting their husbands and them getting out of that afterwards, and that's great. But not all. I'm being honest. I don't think all women are going to do that. They're going to want it just won't happen. Like I mean,
and they don't have to.
No, they shouldn't have to.
Yeah.
They shouldn't have to at all. And because I know that it talks about, the Bible always talks about how come as you are, but that's for Jesus, right? That's for God. I mean, it didn't say anything about come as you are for your woman. Like you might want to fix that before you're thinking about going into a relationship or dating or whatever.
That's a good point.
And not to say that your dating life or your marriage is going to be perfect, because guess what? You're humans. It's not going to be, but have time to, if something's going on, sit down and talk it out. Because that'll be the biggest, I think, that's one of the things I think people, especially, and I'm not in a relationship, but just from what I've heard and seen, is one of the, biggest things is they don't talk. People don't talk anymore.
No,
they just, or I've got this sign in my house that's just funny, but it says they go to bed mad and they don't stay up and fight about what they're, and so, and there's just that disagreement. So I do think for sure that one of the biggest things is communication.
Yeah.
But
something. I mean, that's a good point, though. I mean, I think that's a good lesson that anybody in a relationship can learn. Is and something that I'm learning. Like, if there's ever something that needs to be talked about, well, not sure you're in a fight necessarily, but just something that needs to be said. You need to have a conversation about with your, girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever. Do it before the night ends. And I get it. Like I'm an early bird at 9 o'clock. I'm ready to go to bed. But sometimes you just have to suck it up. Put your boots on and just
that's right.
Tough it out and get through it.
Amen. Well, and one thing I did want to talk about on this episode was accountability. Because for people that don't know, me and Davis are accountability partners. And how important is that for people to have?
I mean, it's crucial. I mean, one of the quotes I got wrote down here is, for every mile of the road, there's 2 miles of ditch. And then once you fall in that ditch, it's real hard to get out of that ditch if nobody's helping you.
I mean, and that is so, that quote's so true, just because, I mean, I remember, I'll just tell the quick testimony real fast. I mean, I called Davis because I was sick of it. I was like, and what was so funny about it was like, hey, can you call me when you have a minute? Dude was on it. Bro was just on it. It was like, all right, okay, I'm fixing to trauma dump on him, or we're fixing to get this rolling. But what was, and also that meant a lot, by the way. But it's been a blessing, I mean, for me, just because we've had to have those conversations every week. And I would recommend that for anybody. Especially if you're going through something like this, or just you got something going on in your life, or even if you don't, I would say find an accountability partner when something does come up, because I was talking with a friend earlier about this, whether it's, they were talking about adversity, but you can't go at this life alone, especially not now. Maybe back decades ago, not now. With how things are, especially with phones and social media and everything, all this kind of ties together. If you hadn't noticed, but you can't go at this stuff alone anymore.
Right.
And you need a circle or one person or two people. You know, I say the smaller the group, the better, because it's tight knit. But that's just me. So.
Yeah, and that's the thing about you, Charlie, is like from the beginning of that conversation we had, you were brutally honest with yourself about what was going on. You weren't sugarcoating it. You were saying like it was. And I think that's something, not just with this kind of sin, but with all kind of sin. If you have an accountability partner, you have to be truthful, and that's really hard. And you have to be brutally honest about it. And sometimes that's really hard. It's really easy just to give half the truth.
Yeah.
But Charlie's a prime example of how to be a good accountability partner, and how to make it easier for your accountability partner to help you.
And I think what was so interesting is like I think God knows who to put you with, because I've that sounds terrible. It's like, but it's like I've had like trial runs with people, and it just hasn't worked. Like I'd be the one putting more effort in than like the other one.
Yeah.
And not to say that they didn't care. It's just that they got their minds were on other things or whatever. And but like when I called you, it just seemed like I wasn't nervous or whatever to really tell you anything. And I think that was because God was like, "Tell him, you'll be all right." Like and I know that's just a bit straightforward, but really, I mean, that's kind of how it went down. Really, it wasn't I wasn't really nervous about it at all. Maybe a little bit, but from what I can remember, I wasn't. I don't think I was.
I don't think you were.
I hope not. But it's been just really cool, just because we've gotten to keep each other updated on each other's lives, and also just keep each other updated on helping each other read our Bible every day, because I think that's a struggle for both of us. If I'm not reminded, and I'll make sure just because I don't want them to think I'm not. Like, if I've read and I forget to text them, oh yeah, I did read, by the way. Like, you've got to keep that communication going. Even, and I think that's crucial with any relationship, not just a man woman, but like friendship, whatever, accountability partner, whatever it is. Communication's key with whatever you're doing, especially just because. That's one of my biggest pet peeves is if you don't communicate with me or whatever, and if I'm like trying to ask you something or whatever, like I know that you may not respond right away or whatever, but that's one of my biggest things. Just communicate. That's all I ask. And I think you can agree to it. So that's a big thing to have. Yeah. Is communicate whatever's going on.
Well, and that's in case it wasn't clear, me and Charlie, how long? We don't normally we decided that we were going to keep track of how long we've gone or whatever. Yeah. But it's been months since from that one of those early days where he asked me if I would tell him whenever I read my Bible to remind him to. Now I feel like he reminds me more than I remind him. But it's been months, and we both read our Bible every single day that whole time. Yeah.
And it's just it's a good, I guess, it's just a good reminder, because also what helps me too is that I've got somebody else that I'm reminding as well, and so I've got to be on it, and so anytime you remind me, I'm like, I gotta remind him too, and so that's also good. And what's really neat about what we're talking about and everything is that I've been able to take what we've talked about and not tell him everything, but tell him the stuff that he needs to be worried about. That other person, I've been trying to tell them that so they can put them on a different path than what we were on, at some point. Yeah. And I was thinking about this the other day. It's like, gosh, I'm only 18. I'm glad that God saved me and brought me out, is bringing me out of it. But I'm only 18 years old, and I've got decisions that I already regret that are massive. Right. You know what I'm saying? That was just something I was thinking about. Of course, as we get older, there's going to be even more of that. And God will bring us out and support us through it. But it was just something I'm like, man.
That's what makes heaven so great. So that when we get there, all that's gone. You know?
That's right.
It's a new slate.
That's right.
A slate that's not going to get messed up either.
Dude,
we couldn't screw it up if we tried.
Hey, I'm ready for that. I'm so ready for that. But that's all I have for this episode, though. Until we roll into part 2. But is there anything else you want to say about phone addiction or sexual sin?
Yeah, actually, let's. We talked a lot about how bad it is, and we talked about how to stop it and stuff too, but something I want people to know is that no matter what sin you've done in your life, it's not too late for you. Your testimony is not damaged, is not broken. In fact, your sin often will make your testimony stronger.
That's right.
Because it's how God brought you through that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we could, if Charlie's all right with it, we can close with a quote.
Go ahead.
Close with a quote.
Do it.
It's not the severity of the past that makes a testimony great. It's the victory you have over it through Christ Jesus. It's the radiance of the present and the hope of the future.
And would you mind telling me who said that? I'm just saying.
That would be by the most wonderful Sarah York.
Yeah, if you hadn't put two
Shout
and
out.
together, Sarah York is, Davis' girlfriend. But, that was, she's right, though. I read that and I was like, that's so good. Like, when I was reading through your notes and stuff, I was like, she nailed that. Really. And that was a really good way to close. This first
and
part.
Charlie was glad because
Oh
all
my
I ever
gosh.
say is Adrian Rogers quotes.
Yeah.
He's like, finally, you got something that's not from Adrian Rogers.
Well, what I was telling him, I said, it's a good thing to have different perspectives, and and she nailed it with that. So, but I hope that this first part encouraged you, and see you in part 2. With another episode of the Young Minds Podcast coming to a close, I just want to remind you that you are never alone and faith is action. So let's get out there.